Hello and welcome to FinextraTV. I'm Liam Zevier and I'm joined today by Andrew Colombi of Tonic.ai. Welcome, Andrew. Nice to speak to you.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful, gloomy day in San Francisco.
Wonderful. Well, today we're talking about data. Now, we often hear data is the new gold, data is the new oil, but a lot of companies still seem to be struggling with how to generate the right data and how to do it for their actual needs. What are you seeing in terms of the data landscape and what challenges there actually are?
Yeah, you know, uh, I see a variety of things kind of hitting companies all at the same time. The first one I would say is scale. I think everyone knows this at this point that our data is growing over time and it's compounding at faster and faster rates. I think organizations have become phenomenal data hoarders, and the result of that is, every 3 years data is doubling, more than doubling in some cases. And then beyond that, we have complexity of the data. Our systems are growing into microservices. Those microservices, each one has their own little data silo. All of that needs to connect together. It used to be that we had a single application database, and now we have dozens of applications all connected loosely via APIs and identifiers, and the technologies underneath those are heterogeneous. Meanwhile, at the same time as all these things are getting more complex, we have privacy concerns that are more and more prevalent in today's environment. Every other week you hear about a data breach somewhere. And all of that is happening while organizations are being pushed to move faster and faster and faster. It's always, the capitalist faster, growth, growth, growth. And that's why companies are struggling. If you review this picture, things are getting bigger, things are getting more complex, they're getting riskier at the same time, and everyone's being asked to move faster than ever before. So when you put all that together, it's a difficult position to be in as a modern company.
Absolutely. And if we're thinking about the bigger, the faster, the more intense pressure, some of these people have been around for a lot longer, so they have sort of legacy systems. When you've got older systems and newer systems, how do they ensure they've got consistent test data across both of those, whether they're old or new, and also remain compliant at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see that all the time, by the way. Um, we see companies that they started a while ago. Maybe they're using, or were using DB2 back then, or Sybase, or other legacy systems like that. And then as they grow, maybe they acquire some younger companies, or just their internal technology teams are excited by new capabilities and they're moving to Postgres, they're moving to MongoDB. Those kinds of migrations are natural and important to modernizing your tech stack, but they do create problems again, right? Like I was saying in the previous question there, it's like the heterogeneous environments really do cause problems for companies. And the way that manifests itself is you've got these different heterogeneous systems, and you need to create software that's going to be able to work with all those different systems to create good test data for yourself. And if you use different software for these different systems, you're going to end up in a situation where your DB2 is being handled differently than your Postgres, and at the end of the day, those two microservices might no longer be able to talk to each other in your test environment because you're creating fake users in DB2 that have different names, different identifiers as the fake users in Postgres because the technology underlying all that fake data isn't speaking the same language. So we see this as a common problem. And by the way, it's not only just like legacy companies that have this problem. Even if you're a younger, sprier company that has just say MySQL and Postgres, these are two very modern technologies, but they're not the same technology. And so you do need to have a test data mechanism that can operate with both of them so that when it creates test data, it can create it in a sort of consistent manner across all of the systems that you might be working with. And that goes beyond to databases. I kind of was just talking about relational databases there, but flat files that you might be using in your data pipelines that are CSV, Parquet, XML, JSON, etc., as well as more like the data warehousing systems like Databricks or Snowflake and that kind of thing.
Fantastic. And you were mentioning about test environments there. What
Mm.
impact does synthetic data have on privacy in that area?
Yeah, I mean, the privacy is kind of one of the early ways you come to synthetic data. If you're, you know, thinking through the test data needs that you have, often the first thing that comes to mind is, well, it can't be production data, right? And so privacy is at the very center of a lot of synthetic data requirements. And it's tricky. It's actually a lot trickier than it sounds like. You might just sort of say, it's going to be straightforward. We're going to replace a bunch of PII and make sure that people's names don't show up in the database. Let's make sure their social security numbers, their email addresses, their phone numbers, their credit card numbers, all those things aren't going to be in the output database. But that may not be enough to really protect your users, depending on the kind of data that you have. So having a technology system that is equipped with more advanced privacy techniques, such as differential privacy, can really make a difference in one synthetic data versus another synthetic data. Let's just sort of say not all synthetic data is created equally when it comes to the privacy guarantees that you can get out of it.
Brilliant. And what can you say about CI/CD pipelines, perhaps for the less technological of us? And also, how can companies ensure robust test data for those pipelines as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to call it like the CI/CD revolution, which has happened a while ago now, right? Like I don't know who the pioneers were, but I definitely, in my mind, I think of folks like Facebook, where they kind of, I don't know if they pioneered it, but I certainly heard about it first when I was hearing that, it's like a developer can make a commit, that commit goes through a barrage of automated tests and then is automatically deployed on Facebook.com. I mean, that's like real efficiency there and really kind of wild from if you look at how it was done before, right? You look at like Windows 95 or any of the early Microsoft products, it's like they shipped on a yearly basis or even less than yearly, as Facebook was shipping multiple times a day, right? So CI/CD absolutely revolutionary to our industry and in really great ways, but it does have requirements on it, especially around your test data, to make sure that your CI/CD pipeline is robust and is kind of it's testing all the different cases that it needs to test. So the things that I think about when I think of what are the high quality CI/CD pipelines looking like in terms of their data, it's a couple things. One, it's data timeliness. So how fresh is the data? And how repeatable is it to get new data into your pipeline? Data completeness, so like, how are we covering the landscape of your data? And then the next one is not about the quality of the data itself, but where the data is kind of hosted and how it's served up to the CI/CD pipeline. So that's data infrastructure isolation. So those first two, like I said, are about data quality. And the last one's more about how you deploy your data. But going into the first two first. So, test data, it needs to reflect your production environment, right? And too often what I see are CI/CD pipelines that are running with test data that's kind of become stale. A developer, some hero on your team spent 3 weeks like scripting furiously to create a test data that they call like the golden data or something, maybe the core data. I've heard various names, platinum data, diamond data, as it gets better, it gets more refined. But then it's lost, or not lost. You still have it, but like the drive to continue to improve it and to continue to maintain it vis-a-vis the development of your product kind of falls by the wayside as features need to be developed on your main product, or other testing needs happen, or you've got, the person who did it left and now it's just sort of like the data and it can't be changed. And it becomes stale. And what that means is it doesn't reflect new features that you've developed, perhaps, or new usage patterns in your software. Your users, may have been attracted to a feature that they weren't attracted to before, and now you've got all this new data that isn't reflected in your test data because it was made, 3 years ago by this person. Hero that they are, they're no longer here, and you've lost that capability to keep it up to date. So that's on the timeliness and on the completeness, really. Like those two things together, I see as major blockers for high quality CI/CD pipelines. So it's important that your mechanism for creating this data be frictionless so that you can, you need to invest a lot into it to make it that way too. Frictionless doesn't come for free. It comes from spending a lot of energy and a lot of, hours developing frictionless software. And if you do all that investment, then you will eventually get to a place where you can get fresh data into your CI/CD pipeline. It reflects the newest and latest, greatest production features and production data patterns, and you can do it on a regular cadence. Every day you can get new fresh data, or every week you can get new fresh data. So those are the two things on data quality. And the last thing I would mention on is the data infrastructure isolation. I started that with the 3 bullets, and that was the last bullet. So when I see high quality CI/CD pipelines, a very important thing is that they be isolated from one another. You want one developer to be able to run their battery of tests before pushing to production, and another developer to run their battery of tests, and the two developers not to interfere with one another, right? You don't want shared infrastructure to cause testing failures because, both of them assumed that a certain data would be in a certain state, but they both mutated that data at the same time. And we see this all the time. The result is sort of like only one test battery can be run at a time, or maybe instead of that restriction, you do like a data reservation system where like this developer gets this data and this developer gets that data, but they're all quite fragile and slow velocity down. So what I see for the best CI/CD pipelines is total isolation, right? Every CI/CD pipeline can run in isolation from the other, and that includes sort of isolated application stack. So that's containerizing your application, and then also isolated data. So that's containerizing your data. And you might be saying, well, what's containerizing your data? You can do this if you're using a modern relational database. You can configure your Kubernetes or your Docker to load your database in a containerized way, and also keep the data as volumes mounted to that container system, whether it's Docker or Kubernetes or whatever. And this can dramatically improve the reliability of your tests because people aren't going to be stepping on each other's toes. It's just like one smaller bit of shared state. And the less shared state you can have, the more parallel your whole process can go.
That sounds fantastic. And I think, data, like we said, is so vast. So having someone like you with such passion and knowledge there really helps to break down what can be quite an overwhelming topic. So thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.